What's up everybody, welcome back to Swanky Disc Golf. Today we are counting down the top 10 best discs that no one is talking about. As always, if you enjoy the content, don't forget to hit the subscribe button, like the video, and comment down below what disc we missed on the list. This is all subjective. These are discs that I don't find my friend group to be talking about very much, and also that I don't see them talked about too much online, and we want to highlight them, and we want you guys to highlight your favorite discs that are flying under the radar in the comments below. We love reading you guys' comments and finding new discs and helping other people find new discs as well. But now, without any further ado, let's jump into it. Starting at number 10, we have the Dynamic Discs Culprit. If you're a Trilogy fan, you might be saying, this is talked about plenty, but I think in the wide world of disc golf, I don't know a single other person who bags a Culprit personally. The first I had ever heard of the Culprit was actually a couple years ago at the Creators Cup. Danny Lindahl was throwing it all over the place, and he was like, you guys gotta go check it out. The numbers on it are 4.20, 3.5. So you got low glide, really good stability. It's a shallow feeling rim, very comfortable on forehands, very comfortable on backhands. And in a world that is dominated by zones and pigs and toros and tactics, the Culprit is just a refreshing take on that overstable 4-speed approach disc. I think it's unique feeling, the plastic is super good, and you can find these for very, very cheap on their website. I've seen them go for less than $10. $10 to $12 is where you'll probably find it averagely. This is a Chris Clemens Culprit, RIP. But if you haven't given the Culprit a shot at that 4-speed overstable approach disc against some of your other stuff, I definitely recommend trying it out. Maybe it'll kick the others out of your bag, maybe it won't. Either way, it's different. Dynamic Discs has a ton of plastic and great prices, like I said. So that's number 10, the Dynamic Discs Culprit. For number 9, we're going down to Texas because we're talking Lone Star plastic, and we are talking the Lone Star Discs Mockingbird. The Mockingbird is actually one of the earlier molds that Lone Star came out with, and I still think it's one of my favorites. Above and beyond anything new that they've come out with, I see myself going back to the Mockingbird more and more. 7.5, -2.1 being the flight numbers, a really nice flippy, controllable 7-speed in that beautiful Lone Star plastic that feels absolutely incredible. I think it's not getting talked about because there are a lot of really great understable 7-speeds out there, but the Mockingbird and the Lone Star plastic is next level. And again, this is kind of going to vary from friend group to friend group. If you and your friends are on the Ranger team or you're big Lone Star fans, you know the Mockingbird, you love the Mockingbird, it's probably one of your favorite discs. But a lot of people don't know about Lone Star at all, and even less people know about the Mockingbird. This is a really sick infinite disc stamp. I picked this up at Another Round Disc Golf in Denver. Super incredible flight out of these. So that's why we're recommending number 9, the Lone Star Discs Mockingbird. It's a good thing we're not trying to play this hole today because there are people literally sitting right next to the basket. Speaking of really comfortable disc golf footwear, today's video is brought to you by Ideo. We've been working with Ideo for probably the past 6 or 7 months now, and I have absolutely abused the heck out of my personal idiosyncrasies, and they are holding up so well. They're super durable is what I am now learning to love about them. For those of you who don't know, Ideo is the only disc golf specific shoe out there on the market right now. It has omnidirectional grip on the bottom that is perfect for run-ups on tee pads. It is waterproof, which is great for literally everything disc golf. They have a lot of cool colorways. They have a new Page Pierce colorway and the Sexton colorway. For me, the most important thing is this toe guard. I drag my toe really bad. It's a bad habit when I throw forehands. I've tried to kick the habit, but then it throws off my throw, which is probably really bad, but I'm gonna be an amateur for the rest of my life, so it is what it is. But I have put so many holes in so many different pairs of shoes, and the idiosyncrasies are saving me. So big shout out to Ideo. You guys can follow the link in the description to check them out. And now let's jump into number 8. Number 8, I want to highlight a DGA disc. I absolutely love DGA. I actually love most of their lineup. It's Discraft plastic, it's super high quality. They have pretty unique molds also apart from Discraft. They have these crazy like 14-speed drivers, and they have some really unique fairway drivers, and their line of overstable mid-ranges is also great. That being said, I think people are starting to know about them a little bit more. The one that I want to highlight today is actually the DGA Hellfire. The Hellfire is a 10.305, kind of similar to an Onyx. I don't think it's the same exact mold, but it's filling that slot. This one in particular, their PL plastic feels, I assume it's titanium plastic from Discraft, which just got a revamp. So I wonder if they might revamp some of these. The flight you get out of this thing is incredible. It is so beefy and overstable. They now have the Avalanche, which is pretty similar. It's a little bit slower, and from my experience, you get much flatter, like board flat tops out of those. These are a little bit domier. They remind me a little bit more of an Onyx, which I absolutely love the Onyx. And that's probably a reason not a lot of people talk about the Hellfire is because of the Onyx. But this one does have a unique hand feel, and I believe is 100% more overstable. The flight I get out of this is super beefy, super reliable. It's almost like a, more overstable, like a Halo Firebird, Captain's Raptor, that kind of flight is what I'm getting out of this. Very beefy. The reason why I don't think many people talk about it, aside from the Onyx comparison, is just DGA's stock stamps and marketing is kind of rough. This is an ugly disc. Do not get it twisted. The gray titanium plastic and the stock stamps that they run, I think are really ugly. They always do this like big pattern here. We love DGA though, we've worked with them before. They have incredible molds, and the Hellfire, they actually sent us a box of a ton of discs, and the Hellfire was one of my favorites because it was just super reliable, especially on forehands. It could handle any sort of wind you had to throw at it. It was more overstable than an Onyx or a Firebird. And it's a really cool disc. It's just ugly, but ugly discs deserve love too. Hellfire coming in at number 7. For number 7, we're talking Prodigy, and what I think has Prodigy standing out among any other company is their understable fairway lineup. They do understable fairway drivers, I think, just as good, if not better, than pretty much everyone else in the game. So for this slot, I'm going their most understable fairway driver. The F7 was one of my earliest fairway drivers that I really loved. Also, even their hybrid series, their H series, I think it was an H7? And even I'm now currently bagging a F3, a Glow F3 that is way more understable than other F3s that I've thrown, and it's incredible. But this slot belongs to their most understable fairway yet, and that is the F9. The F9 is 8.6, -4.5. This thing is comically understable. We did a video with Isaac Robinson, you can go check out, where we played 9 holes, F9 only. And we were literally like, man, this thing's gonna be unusable. It's only gonna be good for rollers. What are we doing out here? But for me and Reed, who are just amateurs all day, this thing actually flew great. You throw it on a ton of hyzer and you just get a full flight out of it. It's really fun. I hugely recommend it to beginners, but even amateurs who want to just have fun with a disc, shot shaping it like on crazy absurd hyzer. They're also only about 15 bucks for a driver, which isn't bad. Again, I always say this, I don't love that they're outsourced to China, but the plastic is not that bad. I currently have a 150 gram F9 in my bag that is meant for basically memes only out on the course. They're so much fun. Everyone's talking about the Rolo right now, which is a mid-range, but understable fairway drivers, I think Prodigy does best and does not get enough credit for it. And the F9, I think a lot of people wrote off as just a beginner disc or a meme disc, which it is, both of those, but it's also great for amateurs. Do not sleep on super comically understable fairway drivers, because if you're not throwing over like 450 feet, you pick this up and you're gonna throw it on this much hyzer and just get a normal like full flight out of it and be like, oh, maybe this is the disc I should be throwing. The F9 is a ton of fun. All right, number 6 is more of a personal pick. I feel like people have been hiding this disc from me just because they haven't been talking about it. I found out, I think it's actually a low-key popular Innova mold, just considering all the different plastics they have it in, but I have never heard of it until somebody gifted me an Innova Happy Holidays Invader. This is an XT Invader. I think this was a store exclusive for disc golf retailers out there. I don't throw a ton of Innova just because of how I was introduced to the sport was really through Discraft and Discmania and things like that, and I'm starting to learn all of these Innova molds. So if you're a big Innova person and you're going, everybody knows the Invader, that's a lie. I even show this to some of my friends and they were like, I've never heard of that disc before in my life. But they make them in Halo plastic, they make them in a ton of plastic. You can get them cheap in DX plastic. But at the end of the day, it feels like a shallower PA3. And that's really it. Shallower, less overstable PA3, which I absolutely love. And I have literally heard people tell me that if the PA3 was a little shallower and a little more glidey, they would love it. And this is what that is. It's not necessarily more glidey, but it's less overstable, which makes it feel more glidey. And I've been throwing it around, and it's such a straight flyer. The numbers, I should say, are 3201. I love those numbers on a throwing putter. I would be curious to see how it putts. This is in XT plastic, so extra tough, crazy tough, whatever you want to say, kind of nicer DX plastic. And yeah, pretty much anytime I get a natural feeling straight flight out of a putter, I'm gonna love it. And I had never heard of this before, and I personally never hear people talking about it. And so that's why it made the list. And that is number 6, the Innova Invader. Okay, moving on to number 5. This one, I think more people will have heard of this, but still not a lot of people are talking about it or bagging it. It's flying under the radar, much like Kyle Klein himself. It is the Kyle Klein Discmania Vanguard. This is a creator series specific disc for Kyle Klein. I think the reason it's not talked about as much is because it is kind of a stock flight numbers and flight characteristics of 9502, which exists in a lot of other ways, in a lot of other very beloved ways. But I think that what Discmania has been doing with their plastic and branding lately, we talked about kind of ugly and rough branding out of DGA. Discmania has always been the exact opposite. They make these incredibly beautiful stamps and put them on incredibly beautiful discs. Their plastic quality has been so high lately since they have moved overseas to Europe, which has been a while now with their manufacturing, and they've been acquired by House of Discs. I know there's sort of mixed reviews on how people feel about that, but you cannot deny the incredible quality control that has been coming out of Discmania. Every single S-line Discmania disc that I have picked up has felt like the absolute best pick of the litter star plastic disc out of any run of Innova discs. And like I said, the flight is kind of stock, but that's what I want. I want to be able to pick up a new one anytime I lose my old one, and it's going to fly 9502. Great for forehands, great for backhands, very versatile disc. If you're a beginner and you want to learn how to throw a Firebird, a Raptor, things like that, but it's a little more overstable, pick this up. If you're an intermediate player and you want really straight flight, a little bit more distance than maybe a T-Bird or an Athena, pick this up. It's good for just about any sort of skill range. How's it going? It's going to fill a different slot for all of those skill ranges, but still really cool disc for anyone. Forehand, backhand, super comfortable, super high quality control, and that's why it's so high on the list. Number 5, the Kyle Klein Vanguard. Coming in at number 4, we have the Streamline Pilot. Everybody on the Swanky team absolutely loves the Streamline Pilot, and we talked about it a lot when we first discovered it, and I think it picked up a little bit of momentum, but the MVP Streamline Axiom trilogy has come out with so many incredible throwing putters and different putting molds that it gets overshadowed and people stop talking about it again. But even through all of that, through your pixels and proxies and envies, I mean, they all fly very differently. But our favorite throwing putter out of, well, one of our favorite throwing putters out of the entirety of the MVP Axiom Streamline is the Pilot. It's a 2501, extremely comfortable. I find it to be slightly overstable, which makes sense, I guess, for the flight numbers. I'm so used to 01 flight numbers actually being kind of understable that this 2501 is very high glide, slightly overstable, so controllable when you're talking about especially 200 feet in, throwing a standstill or throwing off of a tee of a very short hole at a local course. It's very reliable and trusty, and the mold itself is very unique. I don't know how best to explain it. There's no bead on it. Maybe a little bit deep, but not so deep where I would say people with smaller hands wouldn't be comfortable holding it. And not to mention the marketing and the branding and the really cool stamps and the really beautiful discs. It's a factor, it just is. But not many people are talking about this, again, because of your envies, your pixels, your proxies, all these incredible throwing putter molds that are coming out of the same company. The Streamline Pilot just keeps getting overshadowed. It's been there for a while. It's here to stick around. It's an incredible mold, and we highly recommend it. All right, we are into our top 3, and we're going back to Prodigy. We're talking the Kale LaVisca Shadowfax, which, first of all, coolest name on a disc possibly ever. Not sure how they got away with that, honestly, but the numbers are 9.5, -2, 1.5. This is a very straight flying 9-speed. If you have a higher arm speed, you're gonna be able to get really cool shot shapes out of this. We talk all the time, again, about 9 speeds that you get really big distance out of for amateurs, just being really, really incredible molds. I never really hear anybody talk about this. I threw it for the first time very recently, and I'm loving the flight I get out of it. It's 500 plastic, very seamless. There's nothing weird or crazy going on with it, which I say all the time. I don't like weird discs as much. And like I said earlier, Prodigy does understable fairway drivers. This is, you know, fairway distance, 9-speed, but they do understable very, very well. And this is no exception. Really cool flight out of these. And I just never hear anybody talk about really most of the Kale LaVisca line. I think is super cool. They have really cool names, which isn't really relevant, but they have those like Lord of the Rings kind of names that I absolutely love. And this is a disc that might find its way into my bag. And yeah, you guys can let me know what you think in the comments below. Does your whole friend group absolutely know every single disc on this list? I'd be very impressed. But I never hear people talking about the Kale LaVisca line, at least not nearly enough. So the Shadowfax is number 3. All right, the number 2 best disc that no one is talking about. These next two, I'll admit, have a little bit of an asterisk. People are starting to talk about them more. West Side, as an entirety, typically we put in the more underrated / less talked about discs on the market, and I'm specifically talking the Turus. Turus was in a trilogy challenge a couple years ago. For those of you who don't know, the trilogy challenge every year, Dynamic Disc, West Side, Latitude 64 work together to let people run tournaments where they send you, the players pack is 3 discs, and you have to use those 3 discs and only those 3 discs for the tournament. They are a ton of fun. It's a great way to try new discs and to challenge yourself and put everybody on the same playing field. It's a ton of fun. But the Turus was the disc a couple years ago, and people responded really, really well to it. But even so, it's sort of faded back into the shadows, and I don't hear other disc golf YouTube channels talking about it much. Maybe because it's been around for a while, and they assume everybody knows about it, but I meet new players all the time. That's something that we do here on this channel, and I introduce them to the Turus, and they're like, I've never heard of this. I'm always recommended the Mako 3 or the Buzz or the Buzz SS. But what's great about the Turus is it's typically, first of all, cheaper than all of those discs. It's also more understable than all of those discs. It's a very understable mid-range, and it's more accessible in more plastics. They have quite a variety of plastics. You can find them for as cheap as, I've seen them on the internet for $10, $12, all the way up to these crazy, they have that orbit rim with a different plastic in the middle that is like $20. You can get them as cheap or as premium as you want, and it's an incredible, incredible flight, especially for beginners, but also, again, talking for everyone. Learning how to throw these shot shapes is something that amateurs often overlook. You see everybody else throwing overstable discs and you want to go overstable, which obviously overstable discs have a ton of use cases and are more reliable, so people tend to go max weight, a little bit more overstable, let them beat in. But understable, especially mid-ranges, get overlooked constantly. The Turus is 5.5, -3.1. Very understable, but the plastic is so good. We are highly recommending this at number 2. And now, the number 1 disc that no one is talking about. Before we jump into it, of course, don't forget to subscribe if you're enjoying the content. Comment down below what we missed. Also, be sure to follow us. We're on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, pretty much everywhere at Swanky Disc Golf. We post a lot of fun short form content. And then also be sure to check out the Swanky Disc Golf Show. We have a podcast that is available anywhere you listen. We have a lot of fun over there as well. Without any further ado, jumping into the number 1 disc that no one talks about. There's a little bit of an asterisk on this one as well, because people are starting to talk about it. We are starting to get more and more comments. I think we reviewed this disc when it first came out and we loved it, and it didn't really gain a ton of momentum. It's starting to. People are starting to talk about this disc, and it is the Mint Discs Bobcat. 5.40 2.5. It is a great overstable mid. I find it flies a little bit more overstable than that. For me, it's perfect for torquing over on some Anheuser and having it flex back out. Such a good hand feel, manufactured by MVP, put out by Mint Discs. I don't hear many people talking about it, probably because there's not a lot of pros that are sponsored by mint discs, but in the amateur scene, it is starting to get talked about. It is still criminally underrated and such an incredible disc, but that is number one. Thank you guys so much for watching. Again, let us know what you think in the comments below, and we will see you in the next one. Stay swanky.